pranks to hide in your friend's base. If you really want to do something that'll get on your friend's nerves, but still leave them wondering how exactly you managed to pull it off, then why not build your base inside of their base? Yeah, you heard me right. What better way to drive your friends crazy than by literally living inside of their walls? Or if you want to carve out a basement and live underneath their floorboards, that could work very well too. And folks, the longer you can get this prank going on, the better the reveal is going to be. Because by the time they find your secret base, they'll be so confused, if not a little impressed. Since we now have the ability to edit signs without taking them off the wall, then an incredibly easy way to mess with your friends is this very subtle trick. Let's say your friend uses signs to mark where things go in their sorting system. Well, why not modify a couple of them? And I don't mean changing the world completely, although that could be plenty funny on its own right, but just by tweaking little pieces of it to make a typo, that could be enough to drive your friends crazy. Even just occasionally going by and adding an extra space in between words can make them think they're losing it. And then if you want to take this one step further, you could also use honeycomb to wax their signs, which in that case will actually lock the sign, so they won't even be able to fix the typos. This prank, however, is a little less mean and maybe could be seen as a favor. Now see, by setting up this prank, we use a skulk sensor like this that's connected to a dispenser so that we can detect when your friend is walking by and shoot food at them through the ground. Which doesn't sound like a prank, it maybe sounds like a health code violation, but if you want to make it a bit meaner, you could give them actual terrible food like rotten flesh or poisonous potatoes, basically filling their inventory with useless junk that they're gonna have to throw away. Mumbo Jumbo made a walking house like this, but we're gonna do it without using any redstone. Since this green shows off, by simply removing and rebuilding their base in another location while they're out mining or exploring, we're able to make it look as if their build actually just walked over to a different spot. And if they ask you if you saw anything suspicious, you can also just act confused and say you really thought that their base was there the whole time. Because pranking's one thing, but in early education and gaslighting, that's priceless. If you somehow got yourself a massive amount of bottles of enchanting that you're looking to use, then why not put those to use and go fill up your friend's base using XP? Now, while this prank does require a lot of setup, the payoff could be quite the sight depending on how good your friend's PC is. And even more of a funny sight if it's a bad one. Because while a good setup and a good server can usually easily handle a massive blob of XP orbs like this, just by having a slightly slower machine or a couple of mods that lag your game, all of a sudden that nice gesture really becomes out of hand. Man, while loads of free levels is great, not being able to make it over to the enchanting table because your game's running like a slideshow maybe evens this out to being a more of a malicious prank. But if you want to try something that's a bit more involved, you might not be a boy wizard, but you're still able to live underneath your friend's stairs. Since using a trick like this, we could have Piston seamlessly move the stairs out of the way, and then we crawl right through the middle into the backup for our base. And so if you happen to make your friend mad and they're going over and actually ruining your own base, this could be a safe place to hide out. I mean, who's gonna grief their own base, right? So as long as you hold the sneak key and just hide away in their safe location, you might be in enemy territory, but it's not the territory where the enemy's gonna look for you. If your friend has paintings in their house, then you should give this a shot. See, by placing a cactus right behind a painting, the cactus is still able to prick them through the wall. And so if your friend's taking a look at their gallery, they'll be taking random damage as they walk around their base. And this could work even better if they have a hidden entrance hidden behind one of these paintings. I mean, that's a terrible idea regardless. So if anything, we're just showing them that it's a really bad idea with a bit of physical education. Alright, pop quiz. Where do we put the chest here? No, I'm being serious. There is one here. Check it out. See, by placing a chest minecart inside of the block like this, we're able to turn blocks that normally wouldn't be storage into fully functioning chests. And then to use this prank on your friend, why not add a couple of these inside of their base and then place away some of the most valuable items inside that hidden bookshelf. That way, when they ask where their items went, you could always just tell them that you never took anything out of your base. You just changed where it was organized. And I know knowledge is power, but I never thought it was also diamonds too. When you're playing on Java Edition, light gray stained glass panes are practically invisible, whether they're in your inventory or in your chest slots. Which means that if you were to fill out your friend's chest system with a whole bunch of these light gray stained glass, then you could seamlessly make it no longer work. Which could leave your friend wondering why none of their items are going from their item sorter into the seemingly empty chests. But just make sure not to accidentally stack the stained glass panes, since then the number at the bottom would be a dead giveaway. And instead, naming the stained glass panes so that they're not able to stack is the perfect solution for that problem. And speaking of renaming, we're gonna break your friend's chest, but we're not actually griefing anything. Since actually what we're doing is we're taking their chests and then putting them inside of the anvil to rename them. And then once we give it that custom name, as soon as they open up the chest for the inventory, they're gonna see that custom name displayed right at the top of the UI. But it's usually something we just gloss over that it could be a while before they even notice, making the prank even funnier when they actually do. And hey, if you were to put your name on the chest, you could technically claim all the gear that they put put into it. I mean, it literally has your name on it. Here's how I completely ruined my friend's redstone door without them even knowing how I did it. Since, as it turns out, you can actually fully break levers in Minecraft without actually breaking the item. It's a bit complicated, but by spam clicking on the lever in a contraption that looks like this, that'll eventually leave it completely useless, leaving them to stand outside their base wondering why nothing's working. And they'll be even more confused when they break in to see the redstone and see nothing was actually ruined. Instead, we just made the lever a bit dizzy. You ever want to test how good your friend is at hide and seek? Well, why not put a bunch of these zombie heads inside their base? Now, don't get me wrong, getting a lot of zombie heads is definitely a tall task, but if you build a farm like this, then it gets a lot simpler. And then if we were to take a dozen of these zombie heads and place them around their base, then you can find out how long it takes for them to notice all of them. And since most players just run inside their base, grab the blocks that they need, and run out, it's a good chance for you to find out if your friend's a more observant bunch than the rest. Despite what it looks like, this shot's actually filmed upside down. And the trick is that we named a bunch of mobs dinner bone, and then using a lead, we attach them up so that it looks as if they're walking on my friend's ceiling. And imagine the shock of walking into your farm or something like that and seeing all of your cows have floated up right to the roof. It looks more like a mod than vanilla, but it's also harmless, so I think it's good fun. This secret pop-up dispenser could function as a very dangerous trap if you set it up correctly. And to make it even worse, we can connect it to a calibrated skulk sensor so that we can get it to activate whenever it hears your friend's footsteps nearby. That way when your friend walks around, bam, they get shot by the arrow, and it'll be ready to trigger on the next one. This is something that works great for both your friends and your foes, since after pranking them like we have in this video, they're practically the same thing anyways. You know what's better than a secret room in your friend's base? A secret room inside of a secret room inside of your friend's base. Because who would ever keep looking for another secret room after they've already found the secret? So by building a backup secret room inside of your secret room, you can make sure that even if your friend does find the original, they're never going any layers deeper to find the secret room inception. If you look here, this carpet looks completely normal, right? Well, until you try to walk over it and find that you immediately slip off. See, in the same way that we've placed magma blocks hidden underneath your carpet, if you want something a bit more innocent, you could tuck blue ice underneath your friend's carpet and make the carpet as slippery as if it wasn't even there. And scattering these randomly throughout your friend's base is a perfect trap. That way, sometimes they're randomly sliding, other times they're not, and the only way to find out is to completely upend all the carpet and redo the floorboards themselves. This is my friend's door, and here's how I added another door to it. Since by placing their doors back to back like this, we're able to easily double the thickness of their door, which can lead to a moment of confusion when your friend opens up the door, only to find yet another door peeking out behind it. And this even works if your friend has a pressure plate, since you won't be able to tell that it's a too thick door until you step on the pressure plate, one opens up, and you're surprised by yet another door. But if your friend's a funny person themselves, they might just leave it like that and live with it. You might not see the prank here, and unfortunately, your friend won't either. Since what we did is take a Vindicator and hide it inside of your friend's base, and then turn it invisible with an invisibility potion, which I'll fully admit is hard to pull off. At the very least, you're gonna need to get yourself the raid effect, but if you manage to pull it off, this prank is definitely gonna go down in history. And the best part is that the friend won't know that the Vindicator's there until it pulls out the axe and they just see this floating murder weapon coming right towards them. And folks, these things are no joke. In harder difficulties, they can do 19 HP in a single attack, meaning your friend's gonna be wondering how this happened right as they get to the respawn screen. This is my friend's floor before I showed up, and this is my friend's floor after. And the truth with a prank like this is that the more subtle that you do the change, the better that it can be. And so, for example, if your friend had a spruce floor, then we could just change out a couple of blocks to a dark oak or other blocks that blend in perfectly. And if you want to be even more silly with it, then by taking their floor, turning them into half slabs, placing them at the top of the block, and then waterlogging all of them, then you make sure that when they go to change out the floor or build themselves a basement, they're just getting splashed in the face with water. Water which will keep refilling as they try to drain it. But hey, who doesn't want an indoor pool, right? With the help of inverted daylight sensors, we can turn all of your friends' redstone into night mode. That way, all of their things will start to incorrectly activate during the nighttime, making them think that they've almost got a haunted build as their base comes to life at night. But the way that I see it, it's more of a donation. You're adding in a few daylight sensors, which aren't cheap. They just maybe would have preferred if you left it inside of a chest instead of placing it in the world, but beggars can't be choosers. See what's wrong with this roof? Well, I'm sure you do, but you wouldn't want to point it out. Since as soon as you go and break the block that's not like the others, then you'll find a secret anvil that's hiding up there in the roof that's gonna greet you right down there in the floor. And what's great is that they really have no choice if they want to get rid of the ugly looking blocks. Just maybe after the first one, they'll step a little further back, which is great. It's not gonna kill them, but it's definitely gonna wake them up. A lot of players use a pressure plate like this to automatically open up their door as they walk out of their base. So why not take the redstone signal from that pressure plate and feed it into a trapdoor dispenser system, which will automatically shoot out a firework and open up the trapdoor, giving your friend a face full of firework rocket. And if you're lucky, they might be so confused about the whole situation that they'll just fall straight into the hole. One of the best ways to get revenge on your friends is to cause them a lot of lag, since even when they go through and try to solve that problem you caused, it's not gonna go fast. And so, as we can see from this user on Reddit, one of the simplest ways to do that is to place down a bunch of item frames. And then by doing this and placing items inside of those item frames, then it's not even a simple punch to get rid of it. Every single one of these tiles is going to take 2 punches to get rid of, which can very quickly ramp up when we placed as many as these did. Then they're also going to be picking up items with this too, which will quickly get through their inventory space and just make the whole thing such a drag. But hey, it's not called getting revenge because it's a nice thing to do. I think this fits the bill. Here's how to turn your friend's giant piston door into way more of a domino effect. Since by just taking one of the pistons inside of the giant redstone or slime honey block door and turning it around, then all of a sudden all the slices of the door aren't moving in sync, which can then cause them to stick together and seize up the entire contraption, until eventually you have a cascading effect and the entire door falls apart. I mean, it's their fault for having that fancy of a door for their vault. Having stuff to put inside the vault's already a flex. You don't need to also show off on the door to keep people out. I griefed my friend's house, or that's what they think. But the truth actually is that what you see here is not their base, but rather a clever decoy to trick them. After painstakingly rebuilding their house block for block, we can grief it with the usual fire, lava, TNT, you know the works, and then send them screenshots to send our friend into a panic. From there, they log onto the server and get utterly confused as to why it's not in ruins. Lag machines do what they're supposed to. They cause everyone to lag. But what if you don't want to be a part of the lagging bunch? I mean, after all, it's less fun to appreciate if you're also suffering along with your friends. Well, luckily, the way that we solve this so that we're not suffering, only your friends are, is to use something like non-stackable items. And when we throw down all of these non-stackable items like cake onto the floor, usually that would cause everyone around it to lag. It's rendering a lot of entities. But using a client-side mod like Tweakaroo, we can disable item entity rendering entirely. And there you go. Now we won't be lagging, and your friend who doesn't have the mod surely will. Falling into water is a staple of Minecraft safety, which means no one will expect their water chute to be a kill chamber instead. And while we've done this with Lapis in the past, I think this is even better. See, with vertical redstone, we can have them fall through a tripwire and then change our water drop into a lava one instead, causing both a sudden death and a loss of items. And since we use the block updates caused by a moving wall with a piston, the redstone to do this is instantaneous, meaning they'll be none the wiser for what's in store. All we need is a couple of stacks of signs to drive your friend completely crazy. Or who knows, we might be helping them out. Since if we take after this user, the idea here is placing down a sign on every single block and then just naming what block you placed it on. And to me, this cracks me up. It's like the budget version of the here's what you're looking at mod. Maybe some people find this useful. They just might also find it useful to have usable space inside of their base, but let's just say that's a matter of opinion. And for how simple and cheap this is to set up, I just love how silly it is. It's not like you can use water buckets to destroy all of them either. It's gonna take a while to get rid of them. Tinted glass is a very popular block to use now at mob spawners, which I think is too bad for our regular stained glass, and that's how we're gonna fix it. Since if you use black stained glass in place of their tinted glass, they look visually very similar, except for one key difference, being that the black stained glass actually doesn't stop the light level from coming in. And at that point, they'll be very confused as to why their spawner farm stopped working, since even though it visually looks the same, it's just that little bit of light level that's able to throw the whole thing off. But it's their fault for needing a viewing window. If you've ever taken the time to build a big project in survival, then you're well aware that certain blocks are a pain to collect in bulk, and that's usually why things like quartz and prismarine are tough to justify when you're not in creative mode. So until you get some crazy farm to automate the resources, why don't we just fuel up from your friend's foundation? I mean, using those blocks on the floor seems like a waste, especially since they could be using half slabs instead. So for that matter, what if we gutted parts of their builds and replaced it for cheaper variants? That way, both of us get to use these blocks in our builds, and they won't even notice. Honey blocks are clearly a useful tool. Whether you want to keep your villagers in place, mobs out of your base, or fly machine through space, these do the trick just fine. But their sticky qualities can just as easily be turned to the dark side. You see, with the advent of lava cauldrons in 1.17, we can pair these two concepts together and make a particularly sinister trap. Since honey blocks make jumping so difficult, when we throw one of these under a lava cauldron, suddenly, the player's no longer able to escape. And with that, this seemingly harmless block becomes one that you gotta look out for. So if you're trying to feel like a Bond villain, then this might just be your next interrogation technique. Next time your friend goes underground, they should make sure to look at the ceiling, since if they're not careful, they could be standing under this trap, where, once activated, breaks the sign and then drops thousands of gravel on top of the player, which if you stack it high enough, it's gonna be tough for them to escape before they die, even if they were to have an instant instant mine shovel. Oh, and not to mention that the same setup could cause a lot of client-side lag, which is annoying, but it adds to the effectiveness. If they're slow to react, they're gonna be slow to escape too. Do not go in this bubble elevator. Since while it seems peaceful from here, the truth is that at the top of the elevator, we can set it up in such a way where your friend's just gonna land in lava when they reach the top. And from there, if we block the exit, there's really no escape for them. But the first question is, how do you put lava on top of a bubble elevator? After all, lava and water are like oil and water. They shouldn't mix. But thanks to a scaffolding placed in the bubble elevator, we can break off the stream from the lava and still use the speed from the bubble elevator to push them right up into the death trap. And the biggest joke of it all is that the water that they need for safety is just out of reach for them. If your server has a bunch of minecart tracks for transportation, that's the perfect opportunity for some mayhem. Since on those long rides through the nether, people usually go AFK when it gets boring. But what we have planned is a lot more exciting. Since if you just divert that minecart track into a different location, it's possible for us to drop it onto pointed dripstone and get an easy kill. Just remember that if you're doing this against players with armor, you will have to drop them quite a distance. That being around 97 blocks if they were fully enchanted netherite. But the thing is, most players who have netherite aren't wearing a chest plate. So if they're instead using an elytra, that drops down to 51 blocks. And honestly, it's their fault for using a minecart when they have an elytra. Those things are way faster anyway. All we need is a few spider eyes, and we can make one of the deadliest traps for your friends. Since by brewing up a mix of 3 potions, an instant damage 2 pot, slowness 4, and poison 2, we can cram all of those together in a dispenser, and then use this player detection model using a carpet over a redstone ore, so that when they walk on top, they'll be quickly greeted by death from all directions. And since potions can hurt players even through armor, this might be the simplest way for you to bring your overpowered friends down to their low point. And hey, you can even brew up multiple potions at the same time, so you'll have plenty of chances to get it right. Lately, it's been a popular idea to use powdered snow buckets with a carpet over top in your drop shafts, since it is true that if you were to drop on powdered snow in this way, you won't take any fall damage. But come on, it's just too easy. You can use that same carpet to cover up a regular block, and they'll be none the wiser. So as long as that drop down is far enough for them to take enough fall damage, this could be a quick way to kill them off. You can even use a hopper underneath the carpet and collect all their stuff for you. Then it's just too easy. Your friend's base should be the safest place in their world, which is why we're gonna ruin that. And the most straightforward way of doing this is just to remove the light sources from their base. That way we're able to get plenty of mobs to spawn inside. But if you want even better results for this, you could use those light sources that you stole from their base, use them to light up neighboring caves around their house. That way, any hostile mobs that try to spawn are only gonna be able to spawn inside of your friend's house. And that should give them more than a few unwanted visitors. My friend set up this ender pearl stasis chamber to get himself out of danger. But with a few arrows, we can make that into the opposite. See, if we just drop a handful of arrows bouncing right where we know they'll teleport, we can make sure that whenever they get back, it'll be a real surprise. And to get rid of even the most stacked of players, take after this user Malorum and add some TNT minecarts to seal the deal. Watch this trap closely, because if you blink, you might just miss what happened. See, what Mr. Cube and Branzy made here is an effective way to teleport someone into the end. And then, before they've noticed, it'll kill them in the void. See, all this happens due to a glitch where if you push someone with a piston underneath the end portal, it'll teleport them to the exact coordinates in the end. And unless they're ready with an elytra, that should guarantee a quick kill. In real life, it's not uncommon for buildings to sink into the ground slowly over time. And so, that's a reality that we're going to be adding to Minecraft. We'll just be doing it in something of a time lapse. And here, I love the idea of just terraforming a mountain over their base. Now granted, not getting rid of it, but also not making it very visible for us on the surface. But hey, if they wanted to try out an underground base, you're helping them get there. And if you want to really confuse them, you could also rebuild their entire base on top of this new mountain. Don't trust this boat, because even though it looks innocent enough, one bump into this thing and yeah, you get the picture. So taken after Prank Master Green, the way we pull this off is by having a dispenser place a double chest worth of boats on repeat into the water. And then we break the setup, wait for an unsuspecting passerby to bump or jump in, and our mess gets unloaded. So make sure you're not around when they need help cleaning up. I think we all know that one friend whose chest looked like a Jackson Pollock painting, and truly finding anything in this mess is a real challenge. So I think it's our duty to help them out of their disorganized nightmare. But of course, we won't be doing it for free. So when you pop over to rearrange their things, simply take items out of the rotation while you do. And while I wouldn't recommend doing anything drastic like taking all of their valuables, I think nabbing a few items from a stack here and there should be plenty discreet. And hey, since they were so unorganized from the beginning, they probably didn't even realize they had those items to begin with, let alone know that they were stolen. Scaffolding is a pretty useful tool, and a big part of that is how easy it is to clean up. But as some have pointed out, that speed can just as easily be turned to the dark side. As is, if we prep something dangerous like a lava bucket or an anvil up top, then when your friend comes by to break it, they'll be treated to a nasty surprise from above. And the best part, they can't even reasonably build up the blocks to stop it. So while they try and save their stuff, you can sit back and enjoy the show. Moss seems like a pretty harmless block, but add in some bone meal and that bit of vegetation can turn into serious serious devastation. And that's what we're focusing on today. As you'll see, because this block is so good at recruiting, we can wreak some serious havoc at the different bases on the server. And again, the cost is as cheap as a few stacks of bone meal, making this really easy to pull off. So while the stone hoe will make the cleanup quick, it still takes a lot of work to put back to normal. Though honestly, I think it looks quite nice. When it comes to stealing items, we never want to do anything too obvious. And with that, it means we should take just what we need and not get too greedy. Or greedier, at least. And I think this system does the trick. See, let's say your friend has a high-powered mob farm up and running, but all we need to do is just poach some gunpowder for our fireworks. Well, to be more discreet, a sorting system like this helps us out, since they'll still have the illusion of big returns, yet we can sneakily scrape together the profits that we need. And as long as they're satisfied with the bones and flesh, our machinations should go undetected. Anvils are great, but they can quickly get problematic. And I think we're all familiar with this message that the cost has gotten too expensive. It's a rough sight for sure, but one we can use to prank our friends. Now, if your friend is reckless enough to leave their tools lying about in a chest or an item frame, then that's your perfect opportunity. In that case, we grab the tools and then change them up a bunch to drag up the costs. Then when done, you make it look like the original, and they'll be quite surprised next time they go to repair and they can't even do it. Anyone who's ever tried to escape a cave system that's underneath an ocean knows the pain of this one. Because really, if you want to trigger some frustration amongst your friends, then all you gotta do is just trap them in this short staircase and flow water from the top. Especially if you're playing around in versions before the aquatic update, then they're gonna have to slowly meander up every single block to get up to the top. It's quite the punishment, but hey, it's not like they're gonna drown or anything, so it's pretty safe to pull off. And it might just wash away the chances of them ever going AFK again. Most of the time, when you get rich enough to have stacks and stacks of value blocks, you're not examining them too closely. Because, let's face it, you're rich, you don't need to. So if you know someone who's reached that upper echelon of wealth, we might need to turn their ignorance into our bliss. And doing so is as simple as an anvil and some decoys. Since if we take something like yellow concrete powder and rename it to a block of gold, then, even if you hover over it, it's hard to notice from a quick check. And as long as we don't leave any of the legitimate ones to compare and contrast, this subtle swap out should confuse them at the crafting grid. If your friend uses any cobblestone in their paths, then this is the perfect way to make them lose their sanity. You see, by setting up a cobblestone generator with pistons right underneath one cobblestone block, then after every so interval, it'll pop up a new cobblestone block out of the floor, meaning they'll walk by, get confused, and break it, only to find the same block is back the next morning. And since most of the time they'll just break the top block and not look beneath, this prank is great for causing long-term stress to your poor pal. Playing on a server, lag is a common frustration, and unfortunately, some of us experience it more than others. So if you want to get back at that friend with high-speed internet, this door is the perfect prank. Now, the mechanics at play are fairly simple. All that's happening is that once they stand on the pressure plate, it only opens once they step off. And as some of us know, this is indistinguishable from a laggy server connection, meaning they'll be stuck doing this little shuffle back and forth, and they'll never be able to get inside. I don't think I'm breaking any new ground by saying that netherite tools are a high-value item, but getting a set of our own requires a lot of time, and a lot of luck. So it'd be a shame if your friend's spare set just sat there collecting dust when we could use it instead. And to fix that, we have a pretty cheap solution. As you'll notice, enchanted stone tools look virtually indistinguishable from a netherite set, meaning if we were to make some decoys and swap them in, preferably named the same way as their previous pickaxe, then as long as they don't have advanced tooltips enabled, this facade should last long enough for us to trade out what we need. This trap might seem dumb, but that's what's so beautiful about it. Since all you have to do to set this up is go next to your friend's portal and then dig a 4x1 hole as deep as you'd like, so that when your friend thinks they're running up to their portal, they're actually just gonna fall into this pit and die on the dripstone. And folks, the dripstone is the key part here, because just by falling onto one of these tiny little spikes, that'll double the damage that you would have taken by just falling onto a regular block. And come on, it worked well enough for Clown Pierce to fall for it. And in my book, that's plenty proof that it's gonna work on any of your other friends as well. If it works for the best, it'll work for the rest. If you want to slow down your friend's farm rates, then instead of actually ruining the farm, we can just ruin the surrounding area. And one of the quickest ways to do that is to place down a whole shulker box full of bamboo. Or 5 if you want to be like this user. And since each of the things that we're seeing here update on random tick, that means that when they're loading this area, it's going to cause a whole bunch of things to update all at once, and slowing down their profits on wheat. And I'm just saying, if you were to go through and then sell wheat yourself, that wouldn't be a bad way to monopolize the market. Evil? Yes. But profitable? Also yes. Now, by themselves, these zombies aren't much of a pain, but packing a whole bunch of them, we've got something even scarier, lag. And that, folks, is the last thing you want on a server. So to give your friends a tough time, why don't we use an undead union of our own. After grabbing a bunch of zombies, lay down a pile of items, and then wait for them to pick it up. And from there, once their hands are stuffed, those suckers aren't going to despawn, giving us the mobile lag machine to place right inside your friend's base. When someone decides to go AFK in a common place like their base, they feel pretty safe. That is, until you came around and decided to rearrange multiple different choice things around the base. Whether that's moving the chest from the left wall to the right, changing out their block palette, or my personal favorite of flipping the entire thing upside down. Whatever you choose to do, this is definitely a great way to confuse your friends when they come back. And if you want to take on an early lesson in gaslighting, you can just play it off like nothing ever changed. And look, if after all that they want to accuse you for doing it, just say that you were changing up the feng shui of the house. Most of the time when people go AFK in Minecraft, it's trying to get something from a farm, which is great and all, but imagine their surprise if when they go to check the farm return chest and there's no items in there. Because unbeknownst to them, you actually placed a hopper system underneath and stole all of their hard-earned work. This is sure to confuse them. They're not going to have any idea what's going on, and they might even think the farm's broken. And from there, I'll leave it up to you whether you give the items back or you just keep all the hard-earned returns for yourself. Because if you think about it, you did a lot more work trying to steal those items than they did just AFKing there. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?